This episode is partially brought to you by the Humble Choice program. Did you know Humble Bundle has a great monthly subscription service that lets you get a ton of video games every single month? That's right, from plans range from $5 to $20 a month, you get a hold of a bunch of free games they have available to you. And you could use our code down in the description below to go and sign up. It would help our podcast and help you see what great games are available for you this month.
Hello everyone and welcome to the 5th episode of Formula S SWW Shows Formula 1 podcast. I feel like I screwed that intro up, but we'll figure it out. It's me, AJ. I got Mike with me. We've been off because F1's had a summer break, so we took a summer break.
So is that normal for F1 to have some?
Yeah.
Okay.
They have a, this one was a little bit longer. But I think it's normally 3 weeks. It's like a mandated, like you can't even go to the factory.
Really?
Like they shut everything down.
Is there like some reason why? Is it just like a mental break?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like they don't really have an off season for like the engineers and stuff like that. So that is 3 weeks that they know they're going to have off. And, who was it? One of the teams got busted. It might have been Caterham when they were still around. Like, they had people that were going in during the break, and they got fined like 50,000 or 100,000 euro. Which, like, for small teams is a lot. Obviously, for like a Mercedes, they could stomach that, but, you know, so F1 really takes their breaks seriously. They've loosened up a bit though, because like they can do media stuff in the factory. There just can't be any work for
Racing factory?
The racing side of it. Yeah, so
you could be like, hey, we're in a factory, here's an interview, but you can't be like,
yeah, so like
maintenance guy.
Mercedes a couple of years ago did like a lot of behind the scenes stuff of their factory. And because it was shut down, they could run around and do whatever they wanted. So, yeah. But as far as news goes, before we get into the last 4 races, silly season has begun. So George Russell graduates to Mercedes. Bottas goes down to Sauber, replacing Kimi Räikkönen, who was leaving at the end of the year anyway. And the other seat at Sauber is still up in the air.
Have any guess who it's going to be or no?
I have a feeling it's going to be Gio. I just think they're just going to keep Giovinazzi in there, because they don't really have a better option.
Okay.
Like, they could get Charles Schwartzman or Callum Ilott, but he's going to be running IndyCar, I believe. So, you know, there's not a lot of really good options. Hulkenberg could come back, but I feel like he wouldn't want to go to Sauber. He would rather go to a team that he could win at. Alex Albon makes his return to F1 and hops in George Russell's old seat at Williams, which that's actually really surprising because Albon is a Red Bull driver. Like, he's a Red Bull Academy driver, and he was driving in DTM, which is like the German saloon car series, for AlphaTauri, which is Red Bull's fashion brand. So there's some weird deal going on between Red Bull and Mercedes and Williams to get this all figured out.
Just because all the back end stuff of where he can drive and stuff?
Well, because he was still technically under Red Bull control.
Okay.
So Red Bull would have had to have given up his rights. And because Williams is so close to Mercedes in terms of the technical partnership, yeah, there would be some potentially weird stuff going on. And I don't know who Albon's manager is. I know Russell's is Toto, so that's why a lot of people figured he was going to Mercedes. But yeah, so. And speaking of Red Bull, the rumors of Volkswagen partnering with Red Bull are getting stronger and stronger, especially after the teams voted to eliminate the MGU-H from the engines. So it'll make the engines a little more simpler. This also comes from the fact that Honda is out after the end of this year. As of right now, Red Bull is doing their own thing. They're going to take over a lot of the Honda stuff and run it in-house. So potentially this VW thing could just be a branding deal, like when Red Bull had Tag Heuer sponsor their engines, but the engines were Renault engines. So it's unclear exactly what's going to happen there, but that partnership appears to be coming more and more to fruition. And now we get on to the races, unless you have anything to add.
No, I think we're good. Let's start with what I assume is the infamous weather race.
This is Belguim, otherwise known as Belgium, or Spa-Francorchamps. So Spa-Francorchamps is in the mountains in Belgium. In other words, this track, also it's 7,001 meters long, so it's 7 Ks. It's so big that it could be raining on part of the track and it could be sunny on the other part. And that happens a lot. Or you could have a system roll through the forest and the mountains and get like we had, where the rain just dumps. And so the whole weekend, weather was a factor. We'll get to it later in the race, but with regards to what happens, but yeah. Qualifying was nothing really of note other than the fact that George Russell got into Q3 again, which was, I mean, he's been showing pace in that car, in that Williams, so it's definitely fun to watch him. He seems to do better in the wet with that car. I think it just seems
unusual, right? I feel like a lot of people are not doing better when it's wet.
Well, so the thing of it is, right, like, a super slippery car like a Mercedes will do worse in the wet because there's less drag on the car. Mm-hmm. Whereas like a Williams or like a Haas, in theory, would do better in the wet because there's more drag on the car, so there's more pushing the car down. Just inherently. But in Q3, Norris just catches a little bit of water and smacks the wall coming up through Eau Rouge and Raidillon, which is the famous section. If you've ever seen a photo of Spa, you've seen this. It's the left, right, left that goes up like 140 feet. It's insane, and everybody like, there's always comparisons about like, oh, F1 cars through Eau Rouge and other cars through there. It was part of the Tour de France a couple years ago. They came through the area and rode the track, and if you ever want to see how steep Eau Rouge is, pull up the Tour de France video, because these guys are struggling to get up it. But he brought out the red flag, and once everything got going back in order, Russell put a Williams in P2 ahead of Hamilton. Verstappen got pole. Verstappen is a magician with this Red Bull. But the rain did not improve They ended up running 2 laps behind the safety car just to make the race official. And they awarded half points. And just about everyone wanted the track to refund tickets. Because, I mean, they kept pushing the race, kept pushing. They run 2 laps behind the safety car, and then they end the race.
Yeah, that would not be.
Yeah. Here's where it gets interesting. So this Spa had, I believe it was early in the year, or potentially late last year, they had some incredible flooding in the area. And there's photos of Eau Rouge, which is the river that runs underneath the track. It flooded and flooded the track. And so there's photos of Spa just basically half underwater. So, they were just being abundantly cautious, which makes sense. Also, on a somber note, the director of the track was murdered by her husband, whatever.
What?
Yeah. Like 2 or 3 months ago. So the track is kind of, they still don't know 100% what's going on. But, yeah, so it was just a whole situation. But you get Russell getting a P2 and a Williams. Verstappen winning, Hamilton getting third. They got half points, so Verstappen got 12.5. Russell gets 9, and so on and so forth. But then we move a little further west and a little further north, and we go to Zandvoort, which is in Holland, aka the Netherlands. So this track's been there forever. I think it's been there for like 60 years or something like that. It's basically on the beach. It's built in between like a couple sand dunes. And it's probably most known for having a bunch of banked corners. Not too dissimilar from what like you would see in the States with an oval. And everybody was wondering how this track would go because the last time F1 ran on anything with, more than a little banking was Indy. And when everybody thinks of Indy, they think of Indy 05, where the tires were blown out. So everybody was a little hesitant to go to Zandvoort. That being said, they changed a little bit with the track. They actually reduced some of the banking, so the load shouldn't have been as high. But it was supposed to be on the schedule last year. Obviously, it got canceled because everything else got canceled pretty much.
Late fall last year.
Yeah, it was interesting because it was going to be run in the summer, much like it was this year. And that was right when like all of Europe went into lockdown. Mm-hmm. So, that's why they canceled it. Robert Kubica steps up because Kimi got pulled for testing positive because the FIN doesn't care.
I find it interesting about so I understand if you're like super sick with COVID. I find it interesting because in theory, they're like in a closed environment by themselves. I find it interesting how strict they are with COVID hits.
Yeah, because if you think about it, right, like the way NASCAR was handling it last year was the driver got ready in his RV, mm-hmm. and then it was like partitioned that they went from their RV into their car, and there was like 1 or 2 people that they interacted with. Whereas like F1 is so freaked out, and I understand it's because F1's international, so you don't want to, you don't want to be the reason that a country's numbers skyrocket, basically.
Yeah, but they could have some sort of quarantine rules for the drivers.
Which is what they do. They have that, so. That happened last year, which is why Hulkenberg had to step in at well, it was Racing Point at the time. But yeah, so Robert Kubica steps up from the reserve driver at Sauber to take over for Kimi. During qualifying, Vettel nearly gets taken out by another Russian. Mazepin was being a dipshit. Surprise, surprise. Vettel was on a flying lap. Mazepin was behind Schumacher and decides to go wide to get around him. Meanwhile, Vettel was going down to get around the two guys that were getting ready to start a lap. Mazepin gets penalized, but they won't take him out because his daddy has too much money. In Q2, we had kind of the side effect of running open wheelers on bank surfaces. Russell spins out, and because of the unique way ovals or banks are, it wants to take the car up, not down. So Russell basically skipped across the track into the gravel. Didn't hit that hard, but still enough to bring out a red flag because this is an old school track, so it doesn't have a bunch of the runoff stuff. But Latifi, not to be outdone by his teammate because he's been outdone pretty much the whole year, pretty much yeets his car backwards into the wall. Ends Q2 with a red flag. A bunch of people a lot of cars actually didn't get a true flying lap because of it. But Verstappen gets pole at his home race. The crowd goes wild. It was nuts. If you watch the highlights for the qualifying, you can hear when Max first crosses the line, the crowd cheers, and then as every subsequent car passes and doesn't go faster than him, they cheer every time the car passes, and then when the final car comes by, the crowd just erupts because they know Max got pole. Other than that, surprisingly, a pretty boring race, all things considered. Really, we only had one spinner. That was Vettel in turn 3, which is one of the more severely banked turns. And he really just kind of stopped on the banking. It wasn't like he flew off into space. But kind of the entertainment of this race came from the team radio at Mercedes when James Allison, the head strategy guy at Mercedes, calls Valtteri to tell him to abort his fastest lap so that Hamilton can get it, or keep it, I should say, at that time. Basically drops the middle finger and still goes fastest anyway. Hamilton ended up regaining the fastest lap on the final lap, but it was not enough to overtake Verstappen. He wins. As he crosses the finish line, the orange smoke canisters go bananas. Mm-hmm. So I want to say, I didn't put it in here, but there's a team radio of, I think it was one of the Ferrari guys, that said, "Oh, Verstappen must have won." Mm-hmm. And the engineer comes back and goes, "Well, how do you figure that?" And the driver goes, "Oh, because I can see the orange smoke." So, just a funny little tidbit there. And then we go to Italy.
So I want to point out as we get to Italy, This is usually I'll have to check races out ahead of time, after or whatever. Right? This is the one thing that I forgot I was on my phone when the moment we're going to discuss happens. I remember because I looked at my phone and I went, and that's why they have this in racing.
Well, we'll get to it, but I have a story about the Halo as well, and pre-Halo. But the Monza parking lot strikes again. So Monza is a track that it's basically flat out the whole way. So getting what's called a tow from a car in front of you is super beneficial because what it does is the lead car breaks the air and uses all of their energy to move still air. Well, when a car, especially a car like this that has a lot of aero elements, when that goes through what's called dirty air, air that's come off of a car, that air is already moving, so it doesn't have to expend energy to get the air moving. So it can use that energy to speed up. So the tow at Monza is super, super strong. There was the 2019. It was 2019 or 2018 where like half the grid didn't make it to the start, or didn't make it to the start-finish line at the end of Q1 to start a flying lap because everybody was backing up. It was just ridiculous. But Italy was one of the races with sprint qualifying. So basically what that meant was they qualified on Friday. Bottas grabbed the pole for that. And then they were going to have an 18-lap race on Saturday that would decide the grid for Sunday. So the sprint, really, our only note from that is Pierre Gasly caught one of the McLarens, I believe it was Daniel Ricciardo, caught his rear tire and it knocked his front wing loose and it was dragging on the ground. Well, as he goes into what's called Curva Grande, so Monza's a long straight, a chicane, and then you get going and it's a long right hand, that's Curva Grande. Gasly is going through Curva Grande and the front wing gets sucked underneath the car, so suddenly has basically no front grip and the car just shoots into the gravel trap. He got super lucky because he was able to get on the brakes and kind of turn the car, and he really just collided with the left side. Most of the time when this happens, you see the car just nosedive into the wall, and it's super dangerous. Leclerc had this happen to him at Parabolica last year. Last year, 2 years ago? I don't know. It's on one of the Drive to Survive episodes. And it's super, super dangerous when it happens. But that was really the only thing about the sprint race. Bottas ends up winning it. Upset the grid there. Going into the first chicane, first lap, Verstappen and Hamilton yet again clashed at an Italian chicane, much like they did at Imola.
I was gonna say, isn't that like a trend?
Yeah, that's a trend that these two are definitely going after each other. And they kind of bump wheels, but they make it out okay. Antonio Giovinazzi, though, does not get out okay. He runs wide at the second chicane, super unsafe rejoin, and basically drives right into Carlos Sainz. It was super, super dangerous, and it ended up ending his day. And then we get a little respite from the action until, I believe it was lap 43, where Hamilton pits, goes on hards, and rejoins behind Norris, but pretty much alongside Verstappen. And so the way that this first chicane works, the pit lane is on the right side of the track, and it actually opens into kind of the ideal line through that chicane. Well, Max is trying to take the ideal line, but being squeezed by Hamilton, he catches what they're called sausage curbs because they're big. They're orange, they're not red, but they're big and kind of round, and they're designed to do a lot of damage to the cars, to basically make everybody not want to touch them. But Hamilton kind of knocks Max into a sausage curb, and it bounces Max's car up onto the top of the Mercedes of Hamilton. And Hamilton ends up getting back in the race. He finished like 15th or something, but Max is out. But this is just another example of the Halo saving a life.
Like, it was trending on social media.
Yeah. But that being said, Max's rear tire still shoved Hamilton's helmet forward. Supposedly, it actually broke Hamilton's Hans device.
Wow.
Which is designed for like 180G impact, I believe. But, so yeah, this is what you were talking about when you said that's why we have these. I still remember I was watching the Japanese Grand Prix when it was 2014, when Jules Bianchi went underneath a car that was being lifted up, and basically decapitated himself. Not to say that he would have been saved by the halo. Actually, Bianchi's crash is what introduced the virtual safety car.
Okay.
Because it was otherwise it was either safety cars or waved yellows before that. So waved yellows just means you have to slow down and be ready to stop. It doesn't mean that you don't stop racing. So Bianchi was still racing while there was a crane out on the track lifting up, I forget which car it was, but a car out of a gravel trap, and Bianchi hydroplanes underneath the car, and the car ends up hitting him in the head and killing him. So that introduced the VSC and really started the talk about the Halo. We get probably one of, if not the most unexpected grids, or unexpected podiums, I should say, at the end of this race, because we get a McLaren 1-2 with Ricciardo winning, Norris coming in second. Perez gets third. This is the first win for Daniel Ricciardo since 2018. Obviously, because he won, we saw the return of the shoey, and because he won his bet with Zach Brown, the CEO of McLaren, and now Daniel Ricciardo gets to drive a Dale Sr. 1984 NASCAR around a track at speed.
So what's the rule? Is it just you win so much you do that? I'm confused by that part.
He made a bet.
Okay.
So Ricciardo bet Cyril Abiteboul, who runs Alpine. It was Renault when Ricciardo was driving for him. He bet him that if he got a podium, Abiteboul would get a tattoo. They're still working on the design of the tattoo, but he's getting a tattoo. Ricciardo bet Zach Brown that if he won, he would get to drive a Dale Sr. car, because Daniel Ricciardo's number is number 3 because of Dale Sr. So, and Zach Brown happens to own one of the number 3 Wrangler cars.
That'd be an expensive investment.
Not really. I mean, like, it's an 84, so it probably cost Zach Brown $100,000 to $120,000 to get it.
So A, that is a lot of money, but B, you're right. I thought it was going to be a lot more. Like I expected you to say like 500.
Well, so what you got to remember, race cars get used and abused because they're race cars. They're not designed to be show cars. So buying a race car, which the 84 number 3, which is what Zach Brown owns, was a race car. It wasn't like one of their show cars. So yes, they get some value for like racing history, but also a lot of them weren't kept up. So you would have to put a lot of money into restoration. So, but yeah, that'll be interesting to see. I have a feeling. Well, I really hope that. So the cars in the UK, I really hope that they send it to Daytona. Would be awesome, but a NASCAR track to have Ricciardo run it, because Ricciardo lives in LA in the off season. He's got a place in Monaco during the season, but he lives in LA in the off season. Mm-hmm. It would be really fun to watch Daniel Ricciardo take Dale Sr.'s car around an oval because that's where that car belongs. And there really aren't a ton of ovals in Europe. They're getting harder and harder to find. And the ones that still exist are so out of shape that it's dangerous to even walk on them. So, but yeah. And then we get on to Russia, or
Mother Russia.
as they have to call it, I believe they just call it the Sochi Grand Prix. So Max ended up taking an engine penalty to get a new engine in his car. So he didn't even set a time in quali. But yet another race where rain was a factor in qualifying. Q3 started out wet and then dried out, which left Lando Norris taking his maiden pole, Carlos Sainz takes second, and Russell takes third. So yet another Williams starting up front, which is crazy to think about. And the rain comes back during the race, where Hamilton ended up pitting for intermediates, which are, in a way, intermediates are like what your road tires are.
Yeah.
Like they've got channels to direct the water, but they're also pretty slick. You know, they're not like the full wet, which is like a snow tire would be. But they've got bigger patches of rubber contacting the road. Norris decides to stay out, or he forces the team to say that they're going to stay out. Which, if I'm the team, I don't leave that up to the driver. Lando's still pretty young, so I would pit him for inters no matter what. It ends up biting him in the ass. Norris hydroplanes. Hamilton just sneaks on by. Ends up getting win number 100, adding to his insane total. Verstappen gets second, Sainz gets third. Hamilton takes the lead in the Drivers' Championship. And that was 4 races in half an hour because we had a lot to talk about.
Wow. So let's do the check-in we always do, AJ, at the end of these.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about this season? Obviously, last year's season was fucked up. This year's season, as you said, is basically normal minus a little bit of a longer summer break. Do you feel we're back to good racing? Is there still kind of some stuff they're lacking on?
I mean, I like how crazy it's been when weather gets involved. And also the Verstappen-Hamilton battle, like, you know, leading to the McLaren 1-2 in Italy, leading to, you know, Ocon winning in Hungary. Let's see, where else did it impact? That was it. So, yeah. And
Right. I think that's it then. How many more races roughly do you have? I thought races went in through the fall.
we've got Turkey, the US, Mexico, Brazil, TBC, Saudi Arabia, and Abu Dhabi.
It's another couple months.
So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6 or 7 races
Okay.
left in the schedule. So we'll probably have 2 or 3 more episodes, if I had to guess.
Perfect. I wasn't quite sure because I do remember it usually stopped on winter time, so I didn't remember the exact cutoff.
And latest verse there it is. You want to go to Miami next year?
Next year's probably fine. When's next year? I know next year's 2022. I might win next year. Like, when's Miami?
It is May 6th through the 8th, if I remember right.
Maybe we'll have to look. But that sounds doable, I believe.
Going to Miami. And
I think we have to get on the wait list, it looks like.
Yeah, you can get on the wait list or just wait until they say that. They just announced today the date, so.
Yeah, I was about to say, it looks like it just happened, so.
But, yeah, we played our cards right. Think. Well, let me pull up the 2022 schedule. Oh, did they change it?
Yeah,
They
it's like
must have.
weird. I'm looking at it now.
Well, they don't have the stuff for 2022 that hasn't happened yet. But I was gonna say, if we played our cards right, I think we could do Miami and Canada.
I will need to get a passport if I did that, but
Yeah.
which is not hard. Like that just takes a month or two.
Yeah. And then we could, if they have Mexico next year, we could visit all 4 North American races.
We will see. But yeah, we will have to remember to actually look into that as it gets closer. But then that sounds like that is everything for this episode of F1.
Oh yeah.
As AJ said, we'll be back probably in a couple weeks, a month, with more nonsense about more races. But AJ, is there anything else to people, or should we let them go enjoy it?
Go have fun. Turkey's our next race. That track is one of the best.
Perfect. We'll see you guys next time. This podcast was a production of the SWW Show. To learn more, go to theswwshow.com. Remember, you can follow the show on Twitter at theswwshow. You can follow me at Mikey_Maroney. You can follow AJ at LowSeatBoy. Remember, new episodes premiere on Friday, 9 a.m. Central Time on anchor.fm/SWW and podcast services around the globe.